Now, sir, honorable members will recall that the bill was introduced in the House of the People on the 2nd September 1953. It has had a long history and in one form or another it has been before the public since the end of 1949. In the statement of objects and reasons, the various stages through which the bill has passed since 1946 have been summarized, and I need not recapitulate on this occasion the circumstances in which the then Government of India took the decision in early 1946 to initiate an inquiry into the reform of our company law. I would remind honorable members that between 1946 and 1948, the entire field of company law was carefully reviewed by two distinguished company lawyers who were appointed to recommend the broad lines on which the present act should be revised. Their recommendations were examined in the then Ministry of Commerce, and certain tentative departmental views which emerged were circulated in a comprehensive memorandum to all recognized trade and industrial associations, bar association and high courts and the state governments. That brought us to the end of 1949. Many representations on this memorandum were duly received from chambers of commerce, trade and industrial associations, state governments and the general public. At the end of 1950, the Government of India appointed a committee under the chairmanship of Shri Bhabha to go into the entire question of the revision of the Companies Act with particular reference to its bearing on the development of trade and industry in this country. This committee examined a large number of witnesses in many parts of the country and submitted its report in March 1952. This report again was circulated to all states government, chambers of commerce, trade associations, high courts and many other bodies. At the same time, a special officer was appointed in the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, to examine the report in the light of the views received from the interest public and to submit proposals to government for the revision of the present act. The bill now before the House is based largely on the recommendations of the Company Law Committee, modified in a few particulars. Honorable members will notice that so far as public relations go, the bill has covered adequate ground. In a measure like the Companies Bill, however, which covers the entire field of the corporation of joint stock companies, the limits of consultation and discussion can never be exhausted, and I would like to inform honorable members that although the bill was introduced in Parliament over 7 months ago, our officers have been engaged throughout this period in further studies and informal discussions with the interest concerned, and on occasions I have also participated in such discussions. I have also given some further thought to some of the issues arising out of the bill, and I propose at the appropriate stage to bring before the Select Committee any changes in the provisions of the bill which seems to me to be worthy to consideration in the light of this further examination. No honorable members will have noticed that the bill contains 6 clauses and 12 schedules. I think it is probably one of the longest legislative measures in recent legislative history, but its size might be regarded as misleading unless I make a few comments. The bill is both, one must remember, a consolidating and amending measure. As mentioned in the statement of objects and reasons, this is the first opportunity which has occurred since 1923 for the consolidation of the Companies Act. Advantage has been taken of this opportunity to redraft several long and complicated sections in the present Act which have been split up into a large number of clauses. This is the largest simple factor accountable for the increase in the number of clauses in the bill. New clauses embodying substantial changes in the present law would hardly constitute more than a small fraction of the bill. I would also draw attention to the structural changes in the bill to which a reference has been made in the statement of objects and reasons. The redraft of the bill and the rearrangement of the existing chapters in the Companies Act in a more logical order have, I think, resulted in a noticeable improvement in the form of the bill, and I hope will facilitate better understanding and appreciation of the scheme. I wish that the Act which came into effect long ago was implemented properly. I know that the minister here is very honest in implementing it, but unfortunately his colleagues at the state level are disappointing him. Unfortunately, no steps have been taken for trimming or toning up the administration at the state level and at the district level. They have to be taken immediately. I should like now to make a few observations on the budget. This budget makes a turning point in the history of our country. It is no use attempting, as some of my friends have done, either to depreciate the budget very strongly or to suggest that we are not witnessing a new revolution in our methods of fiscal training and technique. I want it to be quite clearly pointed out to my friends that we are now facing the lean years of Indian finance. Hitherto, we had revenue surpluses which were a form of public saving and which were meant to be utilized for capital development. Hereafter, this form of revenue surplus would not be available. We have therefore to find out ways and means of implementing our great program of national construction at minimum cost. My point is that the deficit revenue account would be of the order about rupees 19 to 20 crores. Here, let me point out that I do not agree with those of my friends in the finance department who have attempted to suggest that rupees 9 or 18 crores which are obtained from Pakistan should be put to the revenue side of the budget. They are to be put on the capital side. But that does not seriously alter the trend of my argument. What I am suggesting is that we would have to be prepared for a deficit of a much higher order even on the revenue side. That itself should make us realize that there are very many problems which we have to face and that we have to undertake ways and means of increasing the resources of our country so that it might be possible for us to have a greater amount of surplus or a greater amount of public savings for the purpose of financing capital development. The finance minister, in the course of his speech, Mr. Deputy Minister, pointed out that the deficits during the past 2 years were of the order of rupees 83 crores. I venture humbly to disagree with him because I feel that when we are talking of deficits, we must take into account the overall deficit incurred by the central government, and that would be of the order of rupees 200 crores. During the years of relatively light expenditure, we had a shortfall of about rupees 200 crores. Undoubtedly, now when we are going to have a very great amount of expenditure, we might have a greater amount of deficit and we would have to find out ways and means of trying to meet our capital expenditure. Some members have pointed out that deficit financing is good, others have pointed out that it is poison. One honorable member who preceded me pointed out that it could be taken like a tonic. Now, I am not willing to enter into the merits of deficit financing or demerits of deficit financing in an academic spirit. The time has now come when we should face realities. I do suggest that we have to indulge in deficit financing because without indulging in deficit financing, it would not be possible for us to indulge in capital expenditure on such a large scale. But when we are talking of the scope of deficit financing, I would like to place before the House and the Finance Minister the two great limitations which face us. The first limitation that faces us is that concerning the internal price level. The Honorable the Finance Minister referred to the cost of living. He said that he was going to keep a watch over the cost of living so that it may not shoot up within a short period and make a mess of the plans of capital development. But there is another limitation which has also to be borne in mind, a limitation which has not received as much notice as it should have done in all the discussions that have taken place on deficit financing. That limitation is the external limitation or the limitation which arises on account of our balance of payments position. I think this is as important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as the internal price level, and I should like to elaborate that particular point a bit more because I feel that a time will shortly arrive when we might have either to reconsider our policy or might even have to leave the sterling club of which we are a member. The second serious limitation is as serious as the first. What would be the consequences of deficit financing on our balance of payments? The finance minister in his budget speech points out that so far as the balance of payments position is concerned, they have now, whether it is by accident or design, a favorable balance, and they have contributed about rupees 63 crores to the dollar pool during the past 6 months. But the moment we indulge in deficit financing, we have to be prepared for worsening of our balance of payments.